The patient had been dead for 6 months, and someone was still picking up her prescriptions. Marcus Webb stared at the refill history on his screen, his coffee growing cold, the fluorescent pharmacy lights suddenly feeling too bright. 47 refills, across 3 different pharmacies, all under the same name. But to understand how a routine Tuesday afternoon turned into the unravelling of something far darker, you need to know what brought Marcus to that screen in the first place. It was September 14th, 2019, one of those perfect early fall days in Columbus, Ohio, where the air finally had that crispness to it and everyone seemed just a little bit friendlier. Marcus Webb had been a pharmacist for 11 years, the last 4 at this particular CVS on Riverside Drive. He knew his regulars by name, knew their medications, their allergies, their insurance troubles, their grandkids' names. At 43, Marcus had settled into the rhythm of retail pharmacy. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the cutting-edge research he'd once dreamed about back in pharmacy school at Ohio State. But there was something satisfying about it. Something real. He was the last line of defense between a prescription and a patient. The person who caught the interactions, flagged the dosing errors, questioned the things that didn't add up. And something about this prescription didn't add up. The prescription came through electronically around 3:47 p.m. Oxycodone, 30 milligrams, quantity 90, 1 tablet 3 times daily. Written by a Dr. Leonard Hastings from a pain management clinic about 40 minutes away in Newark, Ohio. Standard stuff. Marcus saw a dozen opioid prescriptions a day. Easy. The opioid crisis had hit Ohio harder than almost anywhere else in the country, and Columbus was right in the thick of it. He'd watched the regulations tighten over the years, watched the electronic monitoring systems evolve, learned to spot the red flags in his sleep. But this prescription pinged something in his brain. Not an alarm exactly, more like a door creaking open in a quiet house. The patient's name was Dorothy Hartwell, age 68. The address listed was over in Whitehall, a working-class suburb about 15 minutes east. Marcus didn't recognize the name. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the prescription history. He pulled up her profile in the Ohio Automated RX Reporting System, the state's prescription drug monitoring program. Every controlled substance dispensed in Ohio got logged in this database. It was supposed to prevent doctor shopping, catch patterns of abuse, flag the patients bouncing from pharmacy to pharmacy trying to stockpile medications. Dorothy Hartwell's record went back 8 years, and the pattern Marcus saw made the hair on his arms stand up. "Hey Priya," he called to his pharmacy technician. "Come look at this." Priya Sharma was 26, fresh out of her technician training, eager to learn. Only been at this location for 8 months, but Marcus had taken her under his wing. She had good instincts. "What's up?" Marcus gestured at the screen. "Dorothy Hartwell, tell me what you see." Priya leaned in, her eyes scanning the prescription history. After a moment, she frowned. "That's a lot of opioids." "Keep looking." Priya scrolled slowly, her frown deepening. "She's filling at different pharmacies. This one here, then across town, then back here, then at a Walgreens near Reynoldsburg. And the timing? Every 25 to 28 days? Priya looked up at Marcus. Like clockwork. But that's not necessarily... Look at the quantities. Priya's eyes went wide. 90 pills each time. That's 270 milligrams a day of oxycodone, if she's actually taking them as prescribed, for 8 years. 8 years of the same dose. No increases, no decreases, no breakthrough pain prescriptions, no changes at all. Marcus shook his head slowly. You know what that tells me. Nobody actually needs exactly the same amount of pain medication for 8 straight years, Priya said quietly. Pain changes, tolerance builds, something would have adjusted. That's one red flag. Marcus pulled up another screen. Here's the second one. Look at the prescriber rotation. The names scrolled past. Dr. Leonard Hastings, Dr. Richard Okonkwo, Dr. Susan Yee, Dr. Melissa Brightwater. 7 different prescribers over 8 years. But here's the thing. They were all from pain management clinics within a 60-mile radius of Columbus. Could be she's just changing doctors, Priya offered. Could be. But look at the overlaps. March 2017, Dr. Yee wrote for 90 oxycodone, 30 milligrams. 4 days later, Dr. Okonkwo wrote for the same thing. Different pharmacies, both filled. That's double dipping, Priya breathed. That should have been flagged. It should have been. The system should have caught it. But watch what happens. Marcus pulled up the detailed records. After the double fill in March 2017, there was a gap of 2 months. No prescriptions at all. Then the refills started again, but this time all from Dr. Hastings, the same doctor who had written today's prescription. She got caught, Marcus said. Someone flagged her. But instead of cutting her off completely, she found a new doctor and just got smarter about it. 1 prescriber, different pharmacies, never overlapping. So what do we do? Marcus was already reaching for the phone. First, I'm calling Dr. Hastings' office. I want to verify this prescription is legitimate. The phone rang 3 times before a receptionist answered. Pleasant voice, professional. Newark Pain Management Associates, how can I help you? Hi, this is Marcus Webb, pharmacist at CVS on Riverside Drive in Columbus. I'm calling to verify a prescription for Dorothy Hartwell, written by Dr. Hastings today. Oxycodone 30 milligrams, quantity 90. 1 moment, please. The hold music was tinny, generic. Marcus watched a mother with 2 kids approach the pickup window, watched Priya step over to help her. The pharmacy hummed with its usual afternoon rhythm. Sir, I have Dr. Hastings on the line for you. A click and then a male voice, slightly impatient. This is Dr. Hastings. What seems to be the problem? Doctor, I'm seeing some irregularities in Mrs. Hartwell's prescription history that I wanted to discuss with you before filling this order. A pause. When Dr. Hastings spoke again, his voice had cooled several degrees. What kind of irregularities? Marcus kept his tone neutral, professional. Prescription history going back 8 years with minimal variation. Multiple prescribers with some overlap periods. Fills at 7 different pharmacies. Mrs. Hartwell has been my patient for 3 years, Dr. Hastings said. She has documented chronic pain from a car accident in 2011, spinal stenosis, degenerative disc disease. Her records are complete. I understand, doctor, but the OARRS data shows some patterns that... Pharmacist Webb, are you telling me how to treat my patients? Here's the part where most pharmacists back down. The doctor has the prescription pad. The doctor has the medical degree. The doctor gets angry, files a complaint, and suddenly you're in a meeting with your district manager explaining why you're questioning the people who write the scripts. But Marcus had been doing this for 11 years, and something was very, very wrong here. I'm telling you that I'm required by law to exercise professional judgment before dispensing controlled substances, Marcus said evenly. And my professional judgment is flagging this prescription for review. This is ridiculous. Mrs. Hartwell is in pain. She needs her medication. Then I'm sure you won't mind if I verify a few details. Can you tell me when you last saw Mrs. Hartwell in person? Silence on the line. Marcus waited. I'd have to check the schedule. We see dozens of patients a week. Of course, I'll hold. The silence stretched longer this time. When Dr. Hastings came back on the line, his voice had changed, uncertain now, defensive. It appears Mrs. Hartwell's last in-person visit was March of this year? 6 months ago. 6 months. Without seeing the patient. but still writing monthly prescriptions for a Schedule II controlled substance. That violated every prescribing guideline in existence. Doctor, I'm not going to be able to fill this prescription today. I'd recommend scheduling Mrs. Hartwell for an in-person evaluation before. Fine, do whatever you want. The line went dead. Marcus set down the phone slowly. Priya was watching him from across the counter. That didn't sound good, she said. No, it didn't. After closing that night, Marcus stayed late. He told Priya to go home, that he had some paperwork to catch up on. But that wasn't why he stayed. He sat in the back office, the lights dimmed, pulling up everything he could find on Dorothy Hartwell. The OARRS database told one story, but Marcus had access to other systems too. Insurance claims, prior authorizations, cross-references with other states' monitoring programs. And that's when he found it. Dorothy May Hartwell had died on March 3rd, 2019. Cardiac arrest, according to the death certificate filed with the Ohio Department of Health. She was 68 years old, died at Mount Carmel East Hospital. Marcus stared at the screen, his heart pounding. March 2019. 6 months ago. But her prescriptions had continued, month after month after month. Oxycodone, 30 milligrams, quantity 90, filled at pharmacies across the Columbus metro area. Someone was using a dead woman's identity to get opioids. Now here's where most people would call the police. That's the logical step, right? You find fraud, you report it, you let the authorities handle it. But Marcus had been in pharmacy long enough to know that sometimes the authorities were part of the problem. He'd seen investigations get buried, seen doctors with connections skate by on technicalities, seen the system protect its own while patients died by the thousands. He needed to understand the full picture first. So he started making calls. The first call was to Beth Moreno, a pharmacist he'd known since pharmacy school. She worked at the Walgreens in Reynoldsburg, one of the pharmacies where Dorothy Hartwell's prescriptions had been filled. Marcus, it's after 9. Everything okay? Beth, I need a favour. This stays between us. I found something and I need to know if I'm crazy. He explained what he'd found, the prescription history, the dead patient, the ongoing refills. Beth was quiet for a long moment. Jesus, Marcus, that's... Hold on, let me check something. Marcus could hear her typing in the background. His office felt too small, too quiet. Every car that passed outside made him tense. I've got her in our system, Beth said finally. Dorothy Hartwell. Last fill here was July. Woman came in, showed an ID, picked up the prescription. I wasn't working that day, but... Can you see who picked it up? Any notes? Hold on. More typing. The notes say, patient appeared consistent with profile, pickup authorized. Meaning nobody looked too closely. Beth's voice was tight. Meaning we filled a prescription for a dead woman and didn't catch it. God, Marcus, how does this happen? How does this happen? That question kept Marcus up all night. A woman dies in March. Her prescriptions keep getting filled for months afterward. Multiple pharmacies, multiple pharmacists, all of them checking the monitoring system, seeing the same consistent history, doing exactly what they were trained to do. And none of them caught it because the system only works if everyone's playing by the rules. The OARRS database can tell you if someone's doctor shopping. It can flag overlapping prescriptions. It can identify high-risk patterns. But it can't tell you if the patient is dead. Marcus got maybe 2 hours of sleep that night. By 6 a.m, he was back at his computer, pulling every thread he could find. Dorothy Hartwell, widowed, no children, lived alone in a small house in Whitehall, died at Mount Carmel East, attended by a Dr. Patricia Chen, internal medicine. No autopsy performed. No suspicious circumstances noted. But here's the part that started to make Marcus's blood run cold. Her Medicare claims continued after her death. Not just the prescriptions, doctor's visits, lab work, physical therapy appointments. All billed, all paid, all for a woman who had been in the ground for 6 months. This wasn't just prescription fraud. This was identity theft on a massive scale. Someone was using Dorothy Hartwell's entire medical identity. And then Marcus found the name. On several of the pharmacy records, there was a field for authorised pickup. Most of the time, it was blank or listed the patient's name. But on 4 separate occasions, someone else had signed. N. Hartwell. Marcus cross-referenced Dorothy's obituary. She had no children, but the death notice mentioned one surviving family member, a nephew, Nathan Hartwell, age 34, of Columbus, Ohio. Now, if you're the kind of person who needs to know how this ends, and I know you are, subscribe now because the stories people keep sending me make this one look like a warm-up. But let me tell you what Marcus did next, because it's the part that still gets to me. He could have called the police right then. He had enough. Dead patient, fraudulent prescriptions, a name, a motive. But Marcus thought about all those opioids, 90 pills a month, multiple pharmacies. For 6 months after Dorothy's death, that was over 500 pills of high-dose oxycodone. Where were they going? At 8:47 a.m. on September 15th, Marcus walked into the Columbus Police Department's non-emergency entrance and asked to speak with someone in the narcotics division. He waited 45 minutes. The plastic chair was uncomfortable. The fluorescent lights buzzed. A woman across the room was arguing with an officer about a parking ticket. Finally, a detective came out. Mid-50s, tired eyes, badge that read, Detective James Morrison. You the pharmacist? Marcus stood. Yes, I think I found something you need to see. They talked for 2 hours. Marcus showed him everything. The prescription history, the death certificate, the Medicare claims, the name on the pickup authorizations. Detective Morrison listened without interrupting. His expression never changed. When Marcus finished, the detective leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. How sure are you about this? Completely sure. Dorothy Hartwell is dead. Someone is using her identity to obtain controlled substances. And you think it's the nephew? I think he's the most logical suspect. He had access to her identity. He probably had her Medicare card, her ID, her medical records. After she died, he just kept using them. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that Marcus wasn't expecting. This isn't the first time we've seen this. What? Dead patient identity fraud. We've had 3 cases in the last 2 years. It's becoming a thing. When someone dies, especially if they lived alone, their medical records don't just disappear. If the right person has access, family member, caregiver, sometimes even a neighbour, they can keep that identity alive in the system for months, sometimes years. Marcus felt sick. So this is happening everywhere? More than anyone wants to admit, the medical system isn't built to check for death. Prescriptions get renewed automatically, insurance keeps paying, nobody asks questions until someone like you starts digging. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus became an unofficial consultant on the case. He wasn't supposed to, it wasn't protocol, but Detective Morrison recognised that Marcus understood the pharmacy systems in ways his team never would. They traced Nathan Hartwell's movements. He was picking up prescriptions at pharmacies across 4 counties, always at different times, always with his aunt's ID. But here's where the investigation took a turn that nobody saw coming. Nathan Hartwell wasn't using the pills himself. He was selling them. When the police finally brought him in for questioning, he cracked almost immediately. 34 years old, unemployed, 2 prior arrests for petty theft. He'd been living in his late aunt's house since her death, running through her savings, and when the money ran out, he got creative. But Nathan wasn't running the show. "I'm just the pickup guy," Nathan told Detective Morrison. "I get the prescriptions, I hand them off, I get $200. That's it. I don't know who's buying them. I don't know where they go." "Who gives you the prescriptions?" Nathan's eyes darted around the room. "You gotta understand, man, these people, they're not the kind of people you say no to." "Names, Nathan." A long pause. Nathan's hands were shaking. "There's a guy. He works at one of the clinics. He writes the scripts. I don't know how he gets them through. I just know he calls me when there's a new one ready." "What's his name?" Nathan closed his eyes. "His name is Terry something. He works at Newark Pain Management." Marcus, watching from behind the two-way mirror, felt the floor drop out from under him. Newark Pain Management. Dr. Leonard Hastings' clinic. The same clinic that had written Dorothy Hartwell's prescriptions for the past 3 years. This wasn't just one nephew scamming his dead aunt's insurance. This was a prescription mill with someone on the inside. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. The part that comes next, the part where we find out just how deep this goes, it still bothers me. Because the system that was supposed to prevent exactly this kind of thing, it was being weaponized by someone who knew exactly how to game it. Terry turned out to be Terence Booker, a medical assistant at Newark Pain Management. He'd worked there for 7 years. He had access to the patient files, the prescription system, and, most importantly, he knew which doctors didn't ask too many questions. Here's how the scheme worked. When a patient died, Booker would keep their file active. He'd monitor the death records, focus on patients who lived alone, patients without close family, patients who wouldn't be missed. Then he'd continue requesting prescription refills under their names. The doctors would sign off. They were seeing so many patients, processing so many refills, they never noticed that some of their patients had stopped coming in. The prescriptions went to pharmacies across the region. People like Nathan Hartwell would pick them up, hand them off to Booker, and the pills would disappear into the streets of Columbus. When they finally arrested Terence Booker, they found more than just Dorothy Hartwell's records. They found 11 other identities. 11 dead patients whose prescriptions had kept flowing for months, sometimes years after their deaths. Thousands of opioid pills. Street value in the hundreds of thousands. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what those pills had done. When they traced the distribution chain, they found that Booker's pills had ended up in the hands of at least 200 users across central Ohio. Street dealers, underground buyers, kids who thought prescription pills were safer than heroin. And at least 7 of those people had overdosed. 3 were dead. I don't know about you, but the fact that 3 people died from pills that was supposed to be monitored, supposed to be controlled, supposed to be tracked by a system specifically designed to prevent exactly this, that one sits with me. Marcus learned about the deaths 3 weeks into the investigation. Detective Morrison told him quietly in the parking lot of the police station, like he wasn't sure Marcus could handle it inside. 3 confirmed overdose deaths tied to pills from this ring. Probably more we haven't connected yet. Marcus leaned against his car. His legs felt weak. I should have caught it sooner. You did catch it. That's why we're here. 6 months. She was dead for 6 months, and I didn't notice until... Hey, Morrison's voice was sharp. You're the only pharmacist out of what, 10, 12 who filled those prescriptions? You're the only one who looked." But Marcus couldn't shake it. That's the thing about being the last line of defense. When you catch the problem, you save lives. When you miss it, people die. And for 6 months, he'd missed it. The Dorothy Hartwell prescription had never come through his pharmacy before September 14th. It was the first time that particular combination of patient and doctor had hit his screen. He couldn't have known. But that didn't make it feel any better. Terence Booker pleaded guilty to healthcare fraud, identity theft, and involuntary manslaughter. He received 18 years in federal prison. Nathan Hartwell got 5 years for his role in the scheme. Dr. Leonard Hastings wasn't charged criminally, but he surrendered his medical license rather than face a disciplinary hearing. The investigation found that he'd been signing refills without seeing patients for years, not just for the dead ones. Laziness, not malice, but the result was the same. 3 other doctors from clinics in the network were quietly disciplined. 2 more are still under investigation as I record this. Marcus testified at Booker's trial. He explained how he'd spotted the anomaly, how he'd traced the refill history, how one prescription that didn't feel right had unraveled an entire criminal enterprise. The prosecutor called him a hero. Marcus didn't feel like one. After the verdict, a reporter asked Marcus how it felt to have brought down a major prescription fraud ring. "It feels like the system failed," Marcus said. "I caught this by accident. One prescription, one day when I happened to be paying attention. How many others are out there that nobody's catching?" The reporter didn't have an answer. Marcus still works at the CVS on Riverside Drive, but he's different now. He checks everything twice. He calls doctors more often. He runs death records against suspicious refill patterns, even when the system doesn't flag anything. His colleagues think he's paranoid. He thinks he's paying attention. Dorothy May Hartwell was a retired school teacher. She taught 3rd grade at a Columbus elementary school for 31 years. Her students loved her. She was kind. She made the best chocolate chip cookies in the neighborhood. She had chronic pain from a car accident in 2011. She never complained about it. She took her medication as prescribed and lived her life as best she could. When she died, she deserved dignity. She deserved to rest in peace. Instead, her nephew and a stranger used her name to pump poison into her community for 6 months. Marcus visited her grave once, about 2 months after the trial. He didn't know why exactly. He'd never met her. She was just a name on a screen, a pattern that didn't make sense. But standing there, looking at her headstone, he made a promise. He would keep paying attention. He would keep asking questions. He would be the pharmacist who noticed. Because the system only works if someone is watching. Now, some people would say Marcus should have just filled the prescription and moved on. It wasn't his job to investigate. It wasn't his responsibility to trace the death records, call other pharmacies, spend his own time digging into something that might have been nothing. Others would say that's exactly what a pharmacist is supposed to do. The last line of defense. The person who asks one more question. I'm curious where you land on that, because I'll tell you where I land. I land on the side that says more people should be like Marcus Webb. Stories like these happen in pharmacies more often than anyone wants to admit. The ones people keep sending me get more unbelievable every week. Subscribe if you want to hear what drops next. If you've ever picked up a prescription and wondered what the pharmacist sees on their screen, all the history, all the patterns, all the things that might not add up, I want to hear about it. Have you ever had a pharmacist flag something that turned out to be a problem? Have you ever been the one who noticed something nobody else caught? 3 people died because a system designed to prevent exactly this kind of thing wasn't designed to check for the one thing that matters most. Whether the patient was still alive. Dorothy Hartwell deserved better. The people who overdosed on those pills deserved better. And somewhere out there, right now, there's another dead patient whose prescriptions are still being filled. Another scheme
that hasn't been caught yet. Another pharmacist who might notice, if they're paying attention. I hope they are.
Because sometimes the person who saves lives isn't the surgeon, or the ER doctor, or the paramedic who shows up with sirens blazing. Sometimes it's the pharmacist who looks at a prescription and says, "Wait, something's not right here." Marcus Webb said those words on September 14th, 2019. And because he did, a drug ring was dismantled, a corrupt system was exposed, and maybe, just maybe, some future overdose victim is still alive today. That's the power of paying attention. That's the job.